Good morning. Our reading is taken from Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. Week 17, How High Should We Aspire? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. The passage this week is from the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 5. I say unto you, that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven. The easiest explanation for these words is that they were spoken in criticism of the scribes and Pharisees, particularly since Jesus was often verbally attacked by them and stood up to them fearlessly. However, it wouldn't have been much of a challenge to the disciples who aspired to spiritual perfection to tell them, don't be like those who lack any such aspiration. Jesus, in fact, says only a few verses later, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. What Jesus was referring to here, then, was the self-righteousness of the priests. Don't seek perfection, he was saying to his disciples, in the image you project toward others. Don't be satisfied with a goodness born merely of ego definitions. The highest virtue is to transcend the very thought of personal virtue in the realization of God alone as the doer. Before this realization, even the thought, I am kind, or I am truthful, is self-limiting. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, the 7th chapter, yet hard the wise Mahatma is to find, that man who saith, all is Vasudev. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
My name is Hanuman. This is my wife, Mari. And we are assisted today by who we... Lord. Not too much stress, is there? No worries. I just had my memory test done and I passed. So, but I did find out. I get a medical newsletter often, and in it was a section on things to be aware of for memory loss. And so anything that says memory loss, I'm right at it. I want to make sure what's going on in there. And so it says, the first question is, which one of these drugs can cause or attribute to memory loss? And so they list a bunch of drugs. And of course, I'm not going to choose the ones that I'm on, right? But of course, yes, one of those drugs I'm taking. So now I can decide, well, I can either die of dementia or heart disease or a stroke, depending on whether or not you take the medication or you don't take the medication. So I guess we won't worry about it too much, will we? All is Vasudev. There you go. Yeah. So I'm going to read from Whispers from Eternity by Paramahansa Yogananda. This particular one is number 63 on page 72. It's called Spiritualize All Our Thoughts and Ambitions. O infinite alchemist, spiritualize our weaknesses into strength and our wrong thoughts into right thoughts. Grow thou a flower of divine understanding, from every seed of activity. With the magic wand of foresight given by thee, teach us to transmute the ugly imps of selfish ambition into fairies of all-serving noble aspirations. Train, Lord, each stallion of desire to become a champion racing for thine abode. Transform our base ignorance into the gold of wisdom, that it become a liquid stream of spiritual gold, rushing steadily to thy shore. So today we're asked, well, how high should we aspire? Well, definitely higher to get out of this, right? We definitely want to move beyond where we're at. And we're told that one thing we can do is strive for perfection. And that's kind of a big thing to ask for. I don't know about you. I wake up every day, start off with the right affirmations, and then things happen, life happens. So there's some barriers that occur as we are striving towards the light. What I wanted to look back at this week. You know, it's only been a week, and we've already had the resurrection of Christ, the liberation of Swami Kriyananda, and a fantastic affirmation of many hands making a miracle at our Ananda community yesterday as we celebrated Rajasi Day. Rajasi was Master's foremost disciple. Out of this group, how many were there yesterday? Could you stand? No, I don't want you. So look at all those fantastic folks. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, that's right. We're talking about humility. Sit back down. Yeah, there you go. It wasn't us. All right. So the reason I had you stand is, for one thing, is not for self-acknowledgement, but just to realize that it really does take a lot of folks to make anything happen. And this week is going from the resurrection to Swami Kriyananda's liberation. We had a friend of ours who had a baby. Yesterday, we all had an opportunity to serve together and feel the expression of the divine in that service. And then tonight, we're going to honor Michael? Al. We're going to honor Al, who was Santosha's father at our astral ascension. This is the entire circle of life is happening in this week for us. And to aspire towards liberation, to aspire towards completely loving God, accepting all that comes to us, and having the non-attachment and the experience, perhaps the wisdom, to realize that though all is Vasudeva, we have brought to us whatever it is we are getting. So I'm going to read from Promise of Immortality. This is a fantastic book if you haven't read it before. It takes the readings that we have in the little book and it expands upon them. And this first one I wanted to read is, again, on how to aspire. Every action, every thought, every feeling must be patiently attuned to the Christ consciousness within. To see all things not as separate realities in themselves, but as channels for God's love, is to make oneself a channel also for that love, and thereby to lift oneself into the Christ consciousness, into Christ's love. When we get to work together, or in particular yesterday, that was an opportunity to rub your personalities with one another, but it's a very light thing, so it's not a particularly difficult experience as far as, having to go to work and maybe work with people that are not in the same attunement as you. But it is a great way to practice. It's a great way to practice what it's like to serve unconditionally and not really concerned about the outcome. More important is the energy that occurs during the experience. That's aspiring towards that light. So how can we do that? Well, again, it's just a matter of lightening up, relaxing, and being in joy. Gosh, today's Sunday, Here you are, Sunday service, we're having a great time together. You're going to go out after Sunday. Hopefully you don't have too many obligations and you can just do what you want. Well, some of us are going to go back to work. Some of us are going to be taking care of our friends and relatives and family. There's all sorts of things. So though it's nice to think about the future, it's probably more beneficial for us to think about the moment we're in. When we're in that moment, then it really doesn't matter what the future brings, because you're in the moment. And you can enjoy that moment. So there is we wonder sometimes, well, how does the spiritual path, how do we know that this meditation and yogic lifestyle is going to really work for us? And I've got to say, I've had my doubts, from time to time. But here in this book, we read, "The proof of these truths is ever before us. We needn't wait for all the results to be in. Every time we turn away from the path of love and express hatred toward anyone, every time we criticize others unkindly, every time we desire to revenge ourselves on anyone, and every time we seek personal satisfaction at the expense of others, we reinforce the wall of egoism we've built around ourselves. Thus, we imprison ourselves and limit our ability to be happy. This wall of darkness is made of bricks of our own thoughts. Every time we open our hearts to others, however, and to God who dwells in their hearts, we shatter a few of those bricks and let the sunlight of understanding in. Many results are immediate and give us either instant punishment or instant reward. The subtle punishment of nagging self-doubt, unsettled feelings perhaps, or the gratifying awareness of increased inner happiness. So right there, we get the point that, golly, if we're just opening our heart up and we're being vulnerable to the situation, we're going to feel pretty good. We're going to, in fact, experience the light, love, and joy. But life has its way of beating us down, so we start to create this brick wall around the heart to protect it. And we think that this is going to do it. We think that, well, if we just hold this energy around the heart and we don't actually put out our childlikeness, that will be okay. We've lost our innocence. And yet, true happiness comes with that vulnerability, but with wisdom. So we may have lost our innocence, but we haven't lost the idea of experiencing God, experiencing light and love in every moment, knowing that, first of all, whatever comes of itself, let it come. It's going to come. And second of all, to know that, yes, we do live in duality. Yes, there's going to be suffering. Yes, there's also going to be happiness. And we have to make the choice to take whatever the situation is and bring light into it as much as we can. So God never said that we weren't going to have pain. God just said that he'd be there with us in that pain. There's an interesting, there's a little kind of a joke. So Joe dies, and unfortunately Joe goes to hell. I don't know how his buddies know that he's gone to hell, but they do. And how this happens, I don't know. They decide to go down and knock on the doors of hell. So they're knocking on the doors of hell, trying to get the devil out there, and the devil doesn't come. So they go back to their priest, and they say, "Priest, Joe's down there. He's not that bad of a guy. Help us out here." So the priest goes down there, and he tries to have a discourse with the devil. You know, let's work this thing out. We can find a way. There must be some sort of way. Joe wasn't that bad of a person. And Satan says, "No, he's out." Finally, Joe's mother comes down. She knocks on the door. "Please let me in." And the door's open. And the mother goes in. That's what God does. God will be at our side, even in hellish situations. He's not going to get us out of it. That's karma. But he's there. She's there. The grace is there. Divine Mother is there. And we want to move towards that nurturing, that part of us that we know exists within ourselves. And by doing that, we mitigate a certain amount of suffering. And two, we are, instead of reacting and compounding our karma, we are actually mitigating that karma, perhaps completely neutralizing it. I've been getting birthday cards and other things from an old friend. And I've known this person for quite a while, and it's always so kind, because that's almost the only time I hear from them. And we actually left on rather difficult terms. But still, I get the birthday card. And I wrote back and thanked them for this birthday card and explained to them how important it was, how few friends, true friends, we actually have in this lifetime, and how important it is to cultivate those friendships, maintain those friendships, and how thankful I was that I had this friendship with these people. As we are aspiring towards that light, we have to be aware of the barriers that might be there. There's a lot of them. You know, life itself is a barrier. But it doesn't have to be, we don't have to go into it blindly. That's the interesting thing, is wherever you are now, you know, you're pretty much not going to go into life blindly. You've got what we call experience. And if you're particularly young, you'll get experience. And if you're very lucky, you have great moms and dads that'll be there to support you through those experiences. But I went to a conference this last week, and one of the topics was on trauma-centered care, trauma-centered personal care. And the question, the kind of the little flag thing was, instead of asking, what's wrong with you? You ask the question, what happened to you? And there was a whole list of things that can happen to us. And they actually, this is all statistical, so they list, there's physical abuse, there's emotional abuse, there's alcoholism in the family, there's divorce, there's physical abuse in the family, all these different things. By the time you get through this whole list, I can't imagine how most of us haven't had some of these traumas, okay? But if you had at least 4 of them, and so they didn't have to necessarily be a trauma to you specifically. It could be a trauma that you observed. So it doesn't have to be necessarily that something specifically happened to you, but you witnessed it or you were in that situation. If you could, out of this number of maybe 10, if you could mark off 4 of them, you had a 468% chance of having at least a history of depression. And I looked at those things and I thought, it doesn't take much to come up with 4. and I thank God every day that I live with a beautiful wife who supports me, and a beautiful Sangha that supports me, and a beautiful guru that supports me, and that I have been brought to a path that has given me the tools that can make life better. We think that yoga is all about meditation, and it is a big part of what we do. But if we don't take that meditation out, and if we don't have the experience of proper attitude, if we don't exercise the experience of what we experience in meditation, even if you don't particularly experience much in meditation, you know how to love, you know how to be kind, you know how to be compassionate, how to be empathetic. These are all things that we have that are innate in the soul. They exist already. So all we have to do is let go and let God. Now, there's another thing that we can experience in life, and that's the big D word. That's for delusion. None of us have ever been in delusion, I'm sure. But Swamiji writes in this book about a particular, this is a particular extreme form of delusion that I won't say that we have to experience, but since he put it in the book, I thought, well, it must be pretty important. He says, a zealous servant of God may feel that he is working for the Lord, but if his activities inspire no devotion in his heart, how can they inspire it in the hearts of others? If once he recognizes his spiritual dryness, he should ask himself, what am I really accomplishing? What is it that I'm accomplishing? No matter what it is you're doing, if what you're doing isn't lightening you up or has the potential to lighten you up, then you kind of have to ask yourself, what is it I'm doing? Often, even in a service that began in a spirit of deep sincerity, develops gradually into a tendency, reluctant at first, then accepted with a shrug of regrettable necessity, to lie, cheat, and treat with ruthless indifference the needs of others, whose well-being is perceived to be secondary in importance to the greater good. So basically, if you're a boss and you have to get something done, and you're not putting people before the goal, then you're going to probably find yourself kind of going down this rabbit hole. You can change that, though. You can change that by just putting people first. People are more important than things. It goes on, basically, downhill from there. No more needs to be said. But delusion can occur anywhere, anytime, and all of us get to experience it. Okay. And that's one thing that's kind of nice about a Sangha and having friends, is hopefully our friends will maybe tap us on the shoulder and say, you know, I've noticed you've been having a difficult time. What happened? Instead of, what's wrong with you? Okay. What happened to cause this new behavior? We might be able to help our friends instead of judging the situation, but asking, what happened? I don't know if you guys get, I bet you do. How many people get touch of light? Oh, you can raise them up higher. Look at that. A lot of people. Okay. If you don't get this, you can get it. It's free. Okay? Where do you go? Well, ananda.org. Just go to ananda.org, and you can get these weekly dialogues, blogs, by the spiritual directors of Ananda, Jyotish and Devi. In this one, they share a few things that they, because we had Swami's liberation celebration this week, said, I'd like to share with you some of life's lessons I learned from Swamiji. Perhaps they will be helpful to you. So I'll just read a few of them. Even when you are taking your first small, unsure steps on the spiritual path, the true teacher sees your soul potential and cheers you on. No one who sincerely tries is ever belittled or rejected, but rather encouraged in their efforts. Each person's karma is unique and complex. Subtly, the teacher gives each one a custom-designed lesson plan to show us the way out of the maze of our karma. We are given the chance to fail repeatedly in our efforts to learn our lessons. Without judgment or criticism, the divine guide patiently works with us no matter how slow we are in getting the point. The true teacher is a role model for how to live in the world. Over time, the divine guide will step back and allow others to guide and train other people. And finally, they'll let their body go. And in doing this, you can feel that inspiration just by thinking about that person. I just want to leave on this one note. Did you know that the monarch butterfly migrates from Mexico to Canada and back every year? Did you know that it takes 5 generations of monarch butterflies to do that? How does that happen? So that means butterflies are created, well, they're not created, but we get butterflies in Mexico. They decide, they're getting hot, so they want to go to cooler weather. So they start flying north. Well, they're not going to make it to Canada. They're going to die. They're going to lay some eggs somewhere, and they're going to die. And there's going to be a caterpillar coming along, and that caterpillar is going to turn into another monarch butterfly, and they're going to go fly a little bit further north because it's still too warm. And they're going to do this 5 generations and end up where they started. Isn't that amazing? That God's intelligence is being transferred to this insect over 1 year's period of time in 5 generations. If that much intelligence is in a butterfly, golly, we must have a lot going on for ourselves. Thank you.
Lived in many countries and mixed with many men. I've shared the days of sunshine, gone with them in the rain. The fires at evening said we were brothers. The fires at evening said we were brothers. A soldier I saw weeping beside a dying friend. My officers had said I must hate him till the end. But seeing his grief I knew we were brothers. But seeing his grief I knew we were brothers.
A man sat on a doorstep to see the children play. The gentle way he smiled there would charm your years away. A stranger he, but love made us brothers. A stranger he, but love made us brothers.
One day I climbed a mountain with friends of other lands.
The words we used were different, but joy one understands.
Our gladness in God's world made us brothers. Our gladness in God's world made us brothers. The words and customs vary like waves upon the sea. One life beneath the surface finds everyone to me. Who knows the truth knows all men as brothers. Who knows the truth knows all men as brothers. Then brothers, why endeavor to set ourselves apart? The fences we've been building squeeze tight upon our hearts. Come sing the truth that all men are brothers. Come sing the truth that all men are brothers.
Save a day, a Rajasi Day at our community. And you're going to need to help us out because we have a lot of wonderful leftover goodies. So right after service in Clarity Room, our bagel bar has been expanded to include a lot of sugary things too. Please do help us out. And just to let you know some other things right after you have partaken of the refreshments, we'll have our healing prayer circle here in the sanctuary. Everybody is welcome to come and pray for any of those that you know to be in need of healing energy. And we go around in the circle. It's really quite a wonderful experience. And we have our yoga, drop-in yoga on Wednesday. A week from Tuesday, we'll start another Learn to Meditate series. And now I will invite you to enjoy some fundraising entertainment.
Let's see. Why do seagulls live by the sea?
Yeah. Because if they lived by the bay, they'd be bagels.
I had to go back home and get it. Today we come before you to stand behind you, to talk about something that we know a lot about. For those of you that don't know us, this is Sharon Kelly, Living Wisdom School Office, Michelle Mall, co-director, Living Wisdom School, and what am I doing here? I'm the fundraising chairperson for the new school building. I'd like to start with a recent quote from a Living Wisdom School student. The student said, I'm out of breath from running home. I learned that kindness is more important than popularity, and that I can make the world a better place. Now, this is from one of our students. I'm going to read it again. I learned that kindness is more important than popularity, and that I can make the world a better place.
And Swami Kriyananda wrote, "Education for life is based on timeless wisdom. I believe it will eventually sweep the world, and that in time, the most important thing Ananda does is education for life."
Our own Education for Life program, known here as the Living Wisdom School, was started 22 years ago and has been serving students and families since 1997. This past year, the school has experienced some rough seas financially.
Before we energize the building project and then finish it, we need to get the school off of rocky financial shores and right the ship first. So, ladies, all hands on deck. All right.
Our first goal with our Right the Ship campaign is to increase monthly donations to the school to service our existing building project loans. And our second goal is to raise $25,000 in donations to see the school through the end of this fiscal year. Although some generous donations have already come in, and thank you all so very much for those donations, we still need an additional $25,000 to right the ship.
And then, finally, the building project. Can you help me out here? Hold on to that. Okay, we gotta. Five years ago, we optimistically started a new school building. Unfortunately, as most of you know, the funding has bogged down. And so far, we have only completed one of 3 phases of construction of our new school. the project is stalled. Recently, though, many of us have felt a new resurgence of energy, magnetism around this project. We think it's time to get it moving again. So to kickstart the building fund, we're also initiating a Trim the Windows campaign. That means trim them with paint. The paint never got on the windows, and not on the windows, but the trim around the windows. That has to be done very soon. So that's what this painting stuff is about.
For those of you who feel inclined to help support our Ananda Living Wisdom School and thereby raise worldwide consciousness, we need your support. And that doesn't just mean financially. We also mean energetically, in the form of prayers, visualizations, and affirmations. We have even prepared an affirmation, a prayer, and visualization for you. We will be available after service with these and to answer any questions you may have. And take donations too.
See you after service.